The corridor outside the recovery bay smelled of burnt metal and sharp disinfectant. The air filters worked hard, but they could not erase the taste of war. Daniel Reeve walked slowly, careful with every step. His left shoulder still ached where the shrapnel had grazed him, and the medgel patch pulled at his skin each time he moved. The battle had ended 6 hours ago, but the ship still felt like it was shaking. Not from engines or weapons, but from the aftershock that lived in people's voices. Orders had been shouted. Names had been called. Some names had not been answered. Daniel had been a logistics officer once, the kind of person who counted cargo and tracked fuel and checked routes twice. The coalition did not celebrate people like that. Heroes were made in the smoke and the fire, not in a quiet office with a screen full of numbers. But on a bad day, numbers became life. The right numbers meant a ship escaped. The wrong numbers meant it didn't. He had learned that 2 years ago during the retreat from the Hallow Belt. He still saw that day when he closed his eyes, the slow crawl of evacuation lines. The screaming alarms, the command order that told him to cut civilian transports loose to save the warships. He had not followed that order. He had rerouted ships. He had lied in a report. He had burned his career into ash and kept moving because people were still on the docks, still begging, still trying to lift children over barricades. He saved some. He lost many. And after that, the coalition stopped calling him a logistics officer. They called him an asset, and they moved him where his choices could be controlled. Battlefield analysis, risk modeling, a job that felt like a leash. Now he was back in the recovery bay, not because he had to be, but because he could not stop thinking about what he had seen. The alien commander had been brought in 5 hours ago. She was one of the Varunkai, tall, armored, and feared. Their kind did not show weakness, not even to their allies. They rarely entered coalition med facilities. They used their own, or they died quietly. But the commander had been hurt badly. The enemy's plasma lance had scored across her chest plate and melted part of her shoulder guard. She had fought on anyway, her troops moving around her like a storm moving around a hard, dark center. Without her, Daniel's unit would have been cut apart in open space. He had watched her hold the line long enough for humans and others to retreat, and then she had collapsed. Daniel had been in the hangar when the med team rolled her in. Varunkai soldiers followed like silent shadows, their eyes sharp. They did not speak to humans unless needed. They did not make room unless forced. But they let the med team pass, and that was as close to trust as most people ever got from them. Daniel did not plan to go inside. He told himself it was none of his business. He told himself he was tired and bleeding and should be asleep. He told himself 100 sensible things. Then he remembered the moment her armor had shifted as they lifted her, and he had seen the inside of the chest plate for half a second. He had seen letters, human letters, his letters. Reeve. His own name carved into the inner surface under where her heart would be. The memory hit him like cold water. His name was not printed on a label, not stamped like a factory mark. It was carved by hand. The lines were deep, deliberate, and old enough to be darkened by time. Someone had done it with care, and someone had hidden it where no one would see, except somehow he had seen. Daniel stopped at the door. A red light blinked above it, warning that the bay was restricted. He watched a human medic step out, his face tired, his gloves stained. "Officer Reeve," the medic said, surprised, "you should be in rest." "I'm fine," Daniel lied. His voice sounded flat, like he had borrowed it from someone else. "How is she?" The medic hesitated. "Alive, that's not a small thing. Her species is complicated to treat. They have different clotting, different nerve bundles, but the stabilizers are holding." Daniel nodded as if he understood. He understood enough to know alive was still fragile. Behind the medic, the door slid open a little. A Varunkai guard stood there. The guard's armor was unmarked, clean, almost featureless, but the posture was not. It was the posture of someone ready to break a person in half if they took a wrong step. The guard looked at Daniel, not hostile, not friendly, just watching. Daniel did not flinch. He had learned not to flinch. "I need to speak with the commander," Daniel said. The guard's head tilted slightly. The gesture was small, but it carried a question. Why? Daniel did not have a good answer. He had only the truth, and the truth felt strange in his mouth. "I saw something," he said softly. "Something that shouldn't be there." The guard's stillness sharpened. The medic shifted uncomfortably and took 2 steps away like he did not want to be part of this. After a long moment, the guard stepped aside. The door opened wider. Daniel walked in. The recovery bay was bright and clean, too clean for the things it held. Humans lay in beds along one wall, some asleep, some staring up at the ceiling with eyes that had seen too much. A few other species were there too, under different monitors, different fluids. The coalition tried to treat everyone, even when it didn't understand them fully. That effort was one of the few things Daniel still believed in. The Varunkai commander lay in a reinforced bed near the far end, separated by a screen barrier. Her armor had been removed in pieces and placed on a stand beside her like a broken statue. The chest plate was propped upright, its inner side facing the wall. Daniel's stomach tightened. He wanted to go to it immediately to confirm what he had seen. He forced himself to look at her first. Without her armor, she looked less like a legend and more like a living being. Her skin was a dark gray-blue patterned with faint lines that caught the light. Her hair, or something like hair, was bound close to her scalp in tight strands. Her face was sharp, her jaw set even in unconsciousness, as if her body refused to relax. A medic monitor hummed. Symbols on the screen shifted in patterns Daniel could not read. The guard remained at the doorway, watching. Daniel stepped closer to the armor stand. He kept his hands by his sides. Touching another species' armor without permission was a serious offense. Touching a Varunkai commander's armor could be a death sentence, even for an ally. He stopped inches away and leaned his head slightly to see the inner surface. The letters were there exactly as he remembered. Reeve. The carving was neat, simple, and unmistakable. His throat went dry. "Why?" he whispered, not to anyone in particular. A soft sound came from the bed. Daniel turned quickly. The commander's eyes had opened. They were not like human eyes. The irises were a pale gold, and they reflected the bay lights in a way that made them look like polished stone. She stared at him without blinking, her breathing slow but heavy. Daniel froze. He was suddenly aware of how thin he was compared to her, how fragile. Even injured, even lying down, she looked like someone who could stand up and end a conversation with one hand. She looked at the armor, then back at him. Her expression did not change much, but something in her gaze tightened, like a door being locked. He realized she understood, she knew what he had seen. Daniel took a careful step back, showing his empty hands. "Commander," he said, using the translator pin at his collar. "I didn't mean to intrude." The translator clicked softly, converting his words into the harsh, layered sounds of Varunkai speech. The device did not capture tone well, but it did its job. The commander spoke, her voice low and rough, like stone dragged against stone. The translator took a moment, then rendered her words in simple English. "You are not meant to be here," Daniel swallowed. "You saved my unit today. I came to see if you lived." A pause. Her eyes stayed on him. The translator did not speak. She had not replied. Daniel's heart beat harder. He felt like he was standing on a thin sheet of ice, and under it was something deep and cold. He nodded toward the armor without fully turning. "I saw my name," he said. "Inside, under your chest plate." The commander's gaze sharpened. The air in the space seemed to change, like the room had become smaller. She spoke again. The translator hesitated, then delivered the words. "You saw what is hidden." Daniel forced himself to keep his voice steady. "Yes." The commander closed her eyes for a slow second, then opened them again. The movement looked like pain. Her fingers twitched slightly against the blanket, but she did not attempt to rise. Daniel waited. He did not want to push, but he could not leave with this burning in his mind. "I don't understand," he said. "Why is my name there?" The commander's breathing grew slower, as if she was choosing each breath carefully. The guard at the door shifted weight, the armor joints clicking softly. Daniel could feel the guard's attention like a blade held near his skin. The commander spoke, and the translator turned it into a sentence that chilled Daniel more than any threat. "Because I owe you." Daniel blinked. "Owe me? I've never met you before today." The commander's mouth tightened, not a smile, not anger, something else, a kind of grim certainty. "You have met my dead," the translator said for her, "and my living because of what you did." Daniel stared, confused. He searched his memory. He had worked with dozens of species. He had coordinated routes and supplies for entire fleets. He had met so many faces, so many names, most of them gone now. "I don't know what you mean," he said. The commander looked away from him for the first time, her eyes shifting toward the ceiling as if she was reading something written there. "You are human," she said. Daniel frowned. "Yes. You do not bind debts," the translator continued. "Not like we do, you cut your ties. You move forward, we do not." Daniel felt a slow, uneasy realization that whatever this was, it was older than this battle. "I was at the Hallow Belt," he said cautiously, "2 years ago." The commander's eyes snapped back to him. The movement was quick, sharp. The guard at the door stiffened. Daniel's mouth went dry again. He had not planned to say that. The words came out by themselves, drawn by the strange gravity in her gaze. The commander's voice became quieter. The translator nearly whispered it. "Hallow Belt evacuation." Daniel's skin prickled. The Hallow Belt was a shame for the coalition, a retreat that became a massacre. He had tried to reduce the damage, but he had never believed his actions mattered beyond the people he could count and the bodies he couldn't. "I was the one who rerouted civilian ships," Daniel said. His hands curled slightly and he forced them to relax. "I didn't follow the retreat order." The commander stared at him as if she was measuring the space between them. Her eyes did not soften. They did not need to. "You stole time," she said. Daniel flinched at the word. I bought time," he corrected, but the correction sounded weak. The commander did not argue. "Time is stolen from death," the translator said, "and death keeps count." Daniel felt the old guilt rising in him, heavy and familiar. "A lot of people still died," he said. "I couldn't save everyone." Her eyes narrowed, not in blame, but in focus. "You saved those you could. You did not look away." Daniel's throat tightened. He remembered faces. He remembered hands reaching. He remembered a child's coat sleeve torn as someone pulled her toward a shuttle. He remembered his own voice shouting coordinates, his own hands shaking as he changed routes. The commander continued, her voice steady despite her injuries. "My cohort was on transport ships. Our civilians, our young, they were on the outer dock. The enemy closed. The coalition order was to abandon." Daniel's breath caught. "I didn't know," he whispered. "You did not need to know," she said. "You chose anyway." Daniel stared at her, feeling as if the floor had shifted under his feet. If her cohort had been there, if her civilians had been among those ships, he tried to speak, but his tongue felt thick. The commander's eyes flicked to the armor stand again. "In my people," she said, "a name placed beneath the heart is not praise." Daniel's stomach dropped. He forced himself to ask the next question, though every part of him wanted to step back and leave. "Then what is it?" The commander held his gaze. Her voice was quiet, but it filled the space like a drumbeat. "It is a debt," the translator said. "A vow, a chain. It means your life changed mine. Now mine belongs to the balance." Daniel did not understand all of it, but he understood enough. He looked again at the carved letters. They seemed heavier now, as if they were not lines in metal, but lines in history. Daniel shook his head slowly. "I didn't do it for a debt," he said. "I did it because it was right." The commander's eyes did not move. "That is why it binds," she answered. The room felt too bright, too silent. Even the hum of machines sounded distant. Daniel's voice came out rough. "So you carved my name, and you carried it under your armor for 2 years. For what? To find me." The commander's breath hitched slightly, a sign of pain. Still she spoke. "Not to find," she said. "To remember, to repay." Daniel took a half-step back before he could stop himself. The guard at the door shifted forward, a warning without words. Daniel raised his hands slightly, palms open, calming. "Repay how?" he asked, though he already feared the answer. The commander's eyes held something ancient, something hard and clear. "In war," she said, "a debt can be repaid with victory." Daniel swallowed. "And if victory is not possible?" he asked. The commander's gaze stayed steady. The translator spoke the final words of the moment with simple, terrible clarity. "Then it is repaid," she said, "with life." Daniel tried to answer. He tried to form any sound at all. But no words came. He stood there, staring at his own name carved where a heart would beat behind armor, and for the first time in years, he understood that some choices did not end when the alarms stopped. Some choices kept walking. And somewhere in the bright, clean room, a debt had been waiting for him to notice it. Daniel did not sleep after that. The med bay door closed behind him, but the words followed him down the corridor, into the lift, into the quiet quarters the coalition assigned to officers who were no longer meant to lead, but were still too useful to discard. The room lights turned on automatically when he entered, soft and neutral, as if the ship itself wanted to pretend nothing had changed. But everything had. He sat on the edge of the narrow bed, elbows on his knees, hands hanging uselessly between them. The image of the carved name would not leave his mind, not the shape of the letters, but the place where they were carved, beneath the armor, beneath the heart, a debt, a vow, a chain. Daniel had lived most of his life believing that choices ended when they were made. You did what you could, you accepted the cost, and you moved forward. That belief had kept him functioning through failures, through funerals, through the long silence after the Hallow Belt when no one wanted to talk about what had happened. Now that belief felt thin. He stood and began pacing the room. 2 steps to the wall, turn, 2 steps back. The movement helped a little. He tried to think like the analyst he had been trained to be, facts first. The Varunkai were old, older than humanity by a long stretch. Their culture was built around balance and debt, around the idea that nothing existed without cost. The coalition had studied them for years and still understood very little. What they knew came from observation, not trust. Armor markings were rare among them, symbols sometimes. Never names, names were personal, names were power. Daniel had known that much. What he had not known was that a human name could carry weight in their system, that something he had done without knowing who he was saving could bind someone else's life. The door chimed softly. Daniel stopped pacing, his muscles tightened. No one came to these quarters unless they had a reason. "Enter," he said. The door slid open. Commander Hale stepped inside, her uniform crisp despite the hours since battle. She was human, mid-40s, with steel-gray hair cut short and eyes that missed nothing. She had been one of the few people who hadn't tried to stop Daniel during the Hallow Belt evacuation. She hadn't helped either, but she hadn't stopped him. That had counted for something. "You look like hell," she said calmly. Daniel let out a short breath that might have been a laugh. "I feel worse." She studied him for a moment, then nodded toward the chair. "Sit," he obeyed. She did not outrank him anymore, but old habits were hard to kill. "I just came from the Varunkai delegation," Hale said. "They're tense." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I was in the med bay." Her eyebrow rose slightly. "I know, that's why I'm here." He met her gaze. "Did they tell you about the name?" She was quiet for a second, too quiet. "They told me you saw something that was not meant for human eyes," she said carefully. "They did not explain further." Daniel leaned back in the chair. "They won't," he said. "Not directly." Hale crossed her arms. "Then you will." Daniel hesitated. Saying it out loud felt like making it more real, but Hale had earned honesty. "She carved my name into her armor," he said, "under the chest plate because of the Hallow Belt." Hale's expression did not change much, but Daniel saw the flicker behind her eyes. "That was 2 years ago," she said slowly. "Yes, and you've never met her before today?" "Yes," she let out a breath. "That's not good." "No," Daniel agreed. Hale paced the room once, then stopped in front of him. "The Varunkai don't do sentiment," she said. "If they bind a name, it's not for comfort." "It's a debt," Daniel said. "She told me." Hale's mouth tightened. "Then we have a problem." Daniel looked up at her. "Why? Because debts like that don't stay personal," she said. "They spread. If she believes her life is owed to you, then her actions in this war are no longer just about strategy. They're about balance." Daniel felt cold. "She said it could be repaid with victory. And if victory is possible," she said, "life." Hale swore under her breath. "Damn it." Silence settled between them, thick and heavy. "What do I do?" Daniel asked quietly. Hale looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time he saw uncertainty in her face. "You stay alive," she said. "And you don't give her a reason to think the debt still stands." Daniel shook his head. "I don't think it works like that." "No," Hale admitted. "It probably doesn't." The door chimed again before either of them could speak further. This time, Hale's posture shifted instantly into command readiness. "Enter," she said. The door opened to reveal a Varunkai envoy, unarmored but no less imposing. The envoy's presence filled the room in a way Daniel could not explain. The air felt heavier, like gravity had been adjusted slightly. The envoy inclined its head toward Hale, then turned its gaze to Daniel. "Daniel Reeve," the translator at its throat said. The voice was flat, precise. "You are requested." Daniel's chest tightened. "Requested for what?" "To speak," the envoy replied, "and to listen." Hale stepped forward. "He's under coalition authority." The envoy raised a single hand. The motion was slow, controlled. "We do not take what is not given," it said, "but the debt has been seen." "That changes the shape of things." Daniel stood. His legs felt unsteady, but he forced himself upright. "I'll go," he said. Hale grabbed his arm briefly. Her grip was firm. "Careful," she said softly. Daniel nodded. He followed the envoy out into the corridor. They walked in silence, passing crew members who quickly moved aside. Word traveled fast on a ship like this, even without explanations. Humans and others alike watched Daniel with curiosity, confusion, and something close to fear. They entered a chamber Daniel had never seen before. It was circular, the walls dark and smooth, lit by a low, indirect glow. Varunkai symbols were etched into the surface, deep and sharp. 3 Varunkai stood inside. One was the envoy. Another was older, its posture slightly bent, its skin marked with pale scars. The third stood straight and still, its armor plain. "The debt-bearer lives," the elder said, the translator turning the words into simple English. "She sleeps, that is fortunate." Daniel swallowed. "I didn't ask for this," he said. The elder's gaze settled on him. "No," it said, "that is understood." The envoy gestured for Daniel to stand in the center of the room. He did so, feeling exposed. "You must understand," the elder continued, "what you carry without knowing." "I don't carry anything," Daniel said. "She does." The elder's eyes narrowed slightly. "That is where you are wrong," it said. "A name binds both ways." Daniel's heart began to race. "What does that mean?" The elder stepped closer. Its presence was overwhelming, not aggressive, but absolute. "When a Varunkai binds a name beneath the heart," it said, "it means that the named life has shaped fate. That fate must be answered, if not by one, then by many." Daniel's mouth went dry. "You're saying this affects more than just her?" "Yes." "How?" the envoy answered. "Her cohort follows her, her cohort follows the debt." Daniel felt the weight of that sentence settle on him like a physical force. Hundreds of warriors, thousands maybe. A group that had already proven willing to throw itself into impossible odds. "All because of a choice I made without knowing you existed," Daniel said. The elder inclined its head. "Yes." "That's not fair," Daniel said, anger finally breaking through the shock. "I didn't save them to own them. I didn't do it to command anyone." The elder studied him. "That is why the debt is pure," it said. "You acted without expectation." Daniel clenched his fists. "Then release her from it." The room grew very quiet. The envoy spoke carefully. "We cannot." "Why not?" "Because the debt is not ours to erase," the envoy said. "It belongs to her and to you." Daniel let out a shaky breath. "So what happens now?" The elder stepped back, giving him space. "Now," it said, "you live and she fights." Daniel stared at them. "That's it, for now," the elder replied. Daniel's thoughts raced. "If I die," he said slowly, "does the debt end?" The envoy and the elder exchanged a glance. "Yes," the elder said. "In death, balance is sealed." Daniel's chest tightened painfully. "Then she'll throw herself into battle even harder to keep me alive," he said. "Yes. And if she can't," the elder's voice was steady, "then the debt will be paid." Daniel closed his eyes briefly. The shape of the trap was clear now. Not a cage of metal or force fields, but of belief and honor and ancient rules. "I never wanted this," he said. The elder's tone softened just slightly. "Few do," it said. "Those who change fate rarely do." The meeting ended soon after. There were no threats, no demands. Just understanding laid bare like a blade on a table. When Daniel returned to his quarters, Hale was waiting. "They told you, didn't they?" she asked. "Yes," Daniel said. His voice sounded tired beyond exhaustion. Hale leaned against the wall. "We'll protect you," she said. "We'll keep you off the front lines." Daniel shook his head. "That won't stop her." Hale didn't argue. They both knew it was true. Hours later, Daniel stood alone at the observation window, staring out at the stars. Somewhere out there, fleets were gathering. Plans were being made. Lives were being counted and traded in the only currency war ever used. He thought of the Varunkai commander lying in the med bay, her armor silent beside her. He thought of the name carved there, of the weight it carried. For the first time since the Hallow Belt, Daniel felt something worse than guilt. He felt responsibility without consent, and deep down, he knew this war was no longer just about survival. It was about whether a single human choice could force the universe to pay a price it never asked for. The war did not wait for understanding. Within 2 days, the coalition fleet moved again. The enemy had regrouped faster than expected, pulling ships from outer systems and forming a dense, moving wall of fire. Every projection showed the same thing. If the enemy reached the inner lanes, dozens of populated worlds would fall. Daniel stood in the command analysis room, staring at layered holograms of space. Red markers pulsed like open wounds. Blue and green icons shifted as fleets repositioned. Every movement felt too slow. He gave recommendations when asked. He ran simulations. He did his job. But now he also watched the Varunkai fleet. They moved differently. Their ships held formation with unnatural precision, like parts of a single body, and at the center of them was the flagship of the commander who carried his name. She had survived surgery. The med reports said she was not fully healed, but she had refused further delay. Varunkai physiology allowed pain to be locked away behind discipline, but damage was damage. Daniel knew what that meant. She was fighting injured because she believed the debt still stood. Reeve, he turned. Hale stood behind him, arms crossed, her face tight. They've assigned Varunkai forces to reinforce the forward line, she said. They volunteered, Daniel exhaled slowly. Of course they did. Hale lowered her voice. The commander requested to fight near human fleets. Daniel closed his eyes for a brief moment. That single sentence carried too much meaning. She's trying to stay close, he said, to keep me within reach. Hale nodded. And to keep herself between you and the enemy. Daniel felt a dull ache spread through his chest. This isn't protection, he said. It's a countdown. Hale didn't argue. Hours later, the first clash began. The enemy fleet struck like a tidal wave. Long-range fire filled space with burning light. Shields flared and failed. Ships vanished in flashes that left empty gaps where lives had been. Daniel watched from the command deck, fingers clenched behind his back. He gave rapid input to targeting teams, adjusting firing solutions, calling out enemy feints before they fully formed. He was good at this. He always had been. That knowledge brought him no comfort. The Varunkai commander led the counterattack. Her flagship surged forward into the thickest fighting, weapons blazing, shields absorbing hit after hit. Smaller Varunkai ships followed, tight and fearless. Human captains noticed. Word spread quickly. They're holding the line. They're taking insane damage. They're not pulling back. Daniel's heart pounded harder with every report. Tell them to rotate, Hale ordered over the channel. They've done enough. The Varunkai response came seconds later. Short, final. They refuse. The enemy pushed harder. A massive carrier broke through the coalition's left flank, releasing waves of attack craft. Human ships scrambled to respond, but the formation was strained. Daniel saw the opening before anyone else did. If that carrier reaches the inner arc, it'll break the line, he said. We need a hard stop. Hale's jaw tightened. We don't have one. Daniel's eyes locked onto the Varunkai flagship. They do, he said quietly. Hale stared at the display, then at him. No, she said. Absolutely not. The Varunkai commander had already moved. Her flagship accelerated directly toward the carrier, weapons firing at maximum output. Smaller ships followed, but she was far ahead of them. She's going to ram, Hale said. Daniel's breath caught. She won't survive that. No, Hale agreed, but she'll stop it. Daniel felt the room tilt. This is it, he said. This is her paying the debt. Hale turned to him sharply. Then stop her. Daniel looked at her. How? Talk to her, Hale said. Now. Daniel hesitated for only a second, then moved to the comm station. His hands shook as he opened a direct channel, bypassing layers of command protocol. The screen flickered, then filled with the image of the Varunkai commander. She was seated in her command cradle, armor sealed, eyes bright and focused. A faint line of dried blood marked the edge of her jaw. Commander, Daniel said, his voice tight. You can't do this. Her gaze shifted slightly, recognizing him immediately. The carrier must fall, she said through the translator. This path leads to your people. There are other options, Daniel said. Pull back, regroup, we can. There is no time, she said. And there is a debt. Daniel swallowed hard. Listen to me, he said. I never wanted this. I never wanted you to risk your life because of me. She studied him for a moment, then spoke calmly. You did not ask, she said. You acted. That doesn't mean you owe me your death, Daniel said. His voice cracked slightly. I won't accept it. A flicker passed through her eyes, something like surprise. You do not accept debt, she said. This is consistent. Daniel leaned closer to the screen. If you die for this, he said, then everything I did at the Hallow Belt becomes something else. It becomes a trade. I don't want that. Silence stretched between them as weapons fire flashed across the display. You speak of wanting, she said slowly. We speak of balance. Daniel clenched his jaw. Then let me balance it, he said, her head tilted slightly. Explain. If you believe a life must be paid, Daniel said, then take mine off the board, pull back, let me go where you are. Hale shouted his name from behind him, but he ignored her. The Varunkai commander's eyes widened slightly. You would place yourself in danger. Yes, Daniel said, not because I owe you, but because I won't let someone else die for my choices. The bridge around her shook as enemy fire struck, warning lights flared. "This is not logical," she said. Daniel shook his head. "Neither is ramming a carrier." She held his gaze. For the first time, doubt flickered across her expression. "You would stand where death can take you," she said, "so that the debt has no direction." "Yes," Daniel said, "I would." Another explosion rocked her ship. The carrier loomed closer. For a long second, the universe seemed to pause. Then she spoke. "You are dangerous," she said, "not with weapons, with meaning." Daniel let out a shaky breath. "Commander," he said, "please." Her eyes shifted to the tactical display. Calculations ran behind them, fast and precise. "Change vector," she ordered suddenly. The flagship veered, narrowly avoiding a direct collision. Smaller Varunkai ships surged forward instead, forming a dense strike wedge. Human cruisers followed, seizing the opening. Hale exhaled sharply. "She pulled back," she said. Daniel's knees nearly gave out. The battle raged on, brutal and unforgiving, but the line held. The enemy carrier was destroyed by combined fire, not sacrifice. Losses were heavy, but the collapse did not come. When the shooting finally slowed, the cost was clear. Thousands dead, ships lost, but the inner lanes still stood. Daniel left the command deck as soon as he was able. He didn't wait for permission. He returned to the med bay. The Varunkai commander lay on the same bed as before, armor removed again, new damage evident, but she was alive. He stood beside her in silence. After a moment, her eyes opened. "You interfered," she said. "Yes," Daniel replied. "You disrupted balance." "I changed it," he said. "That's what humans do." She watched him carefully. "You offered yourself." "I meant it," he said. "I know," she said. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of machines. "Why?" she asked. Daniel took a breath. "Because if your people learn that humans solve debts by dying," he said, "then more names will be carved, more lives will be spent. That's not the future I want." She was silent for a long time. Finally, she spoke. "Among my people," she said, "debts are paid forward when they cannot be closed." Daniel frowned slightly. "Paid forward how?" She turned her head slightly, looking at the armor stand. "The name remains," she said, "but its meaning changes." Daniel's chest tightened. "To what?" "To witness," she said, "not a chain, a reminder." He searched her face. "A reminder of what?" "That a human once acted without fear of cost," she said, "and refused to let that act become a weapon." Daniel felt his throat tighten. "Does that mean the debt is over?" She considered. "The debt," she said, "has transformed." He let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Outside the med bay, the war continued to grind forward, but something subtle had shifted. Varunkai ships no longer charged blindly. They coordinated, adapted, fought with precision instead of sacrifice. Their warriors still fought fiercely, but not recklessly. Other species noticed. Whispers spread through the fleet. Humans were strange. They did not bind others with obligation. They broke cycles without destroying honor. They refused power that came from blood, and that somehow made them terrifying in a way no weapon ever could. Daniel stood alone later, staring at the stars again. The war was far from over. He knew that. But for the first time since his name had been carved into alien armor, he felt something like hope. Not because the debt was gone, but because it had been changed. And because the universe, slowly and unwillingly, was learning that humanity did not just survive history. It argued with it. The final battle came quietly. There was no dramatic warning, no sudden alarm that shook the fleet awake. The enemy simply stopped retreating and turned, gathering everything they had left into one massive formation. It was a wall of ships, thick and dark, meant to end the war in a single blow. Daniel stood on the command deck, calm in a way that surprised even him. He felt tired, older than when the war had started, but the fear that once lived in his chest was gone. He understood now that some moments could not be avoided. They could only be faced honestly. The Varunkai commander stood on the opposite side of the deck, fully armored, her posture steady. Her armor was repaired, but the marks of past damage remained. The name beneath it remained too. They did not speak before the battle. They did not need to. When the enemy attacked, the coalition did not break. Human ships held formation even as shields failed and hulls burned. Instead of charging forward or pulling back in panic, they adjusted. They adapted. Orders flowed smoothly past from ship to ship without hesitation. The Varunkai fought beside them, not ahead of them. That alone changed everything. The enemy expected sacrifice. They expected fear. They expected the coalition to trade lives for time again and again. Instead, they faced coordination. Daniel watched the battle unfold like a living thing. Enemy strikes were anticipated and redirected. Traps were laid and sprung. Human commanders did not seek glory. They sought outcomes. When a Varunkai cruiser took heavy damage, human ships moved to cover it without orders. When a human frigate lost engines, Varunkai fighters formed a shield around it until it could be towed clear. No one spoke of debt. No one spoke of honor. They spoke only of survival. At the center of the enemy formation was their command vessel, vast and heavily protected. It pushed forward, confident that it could not be stopped. Daniel saw the opening. It was small, brief. Easy to miss? He sent the data. The Varunkai commander saw it at the same moment. She gave the order not to sacrifice, but to strike together. Human and Varunkai fire converged, not a reckless charge, a precise collapse. Shields failed, armor cracked. The enemy command vessel split apart under pressure it could not escape. When it died, the enemy fleet lost its shape. Some ships fled, others surrendered. A few fought until they were silenced. The war ended not with a scream, but with a long, exhausted breath. In the days that followed, the galaxy changed its language. Reports spread. Analysis followed. Historians argued. They noted that humanity had never been the strongest species, never the fastest, never the most numerous. But they were the ones who refused to let the universe decide what their choices meant. Daniel stood once more in the med bay. The Varunkai commander sat upright now, no machines attached, her armor resting nearby. She watched him as he approached. "The war is finished," he said. "Yes," she replied, "because the pattern broke." Daniel nodded. "What will your people say about the name?" She was quiet for a moment. "They will say it is a witness," she said, "not to a debt, to a truth." "What truth?" Daniel asked. "That humans do not bind others," she said. "They remind them who they choose to be." Daniel felt a weight lift from him, something he had carried since the Hallow Belt without knowing its shape. "Will you remove it?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, it will remain." But not as a chain. They stood in silence, two beings from different worlds, connected not by obligation, but by understanding. Later, as the fleets separated and worlds began to rebuild, a new classification quietly appeared in coalition records. Humans were no longer listed as minor allies. They were listed as catalysts, those who did not conquer history, those who changed its direction. And far from the battlefield, beneath alien armor, a human name remained carved close to a heart, not as a price to be paid, but as a reminder that some choices echo forever, not because of blood, but because of meaning.